Is there any deal that you would sign prior to free agency? When you choose Scott Boras as your agent, the answer is absolutely none unless you overpay to the point of night sweats. Scott Boras is one of the worst agents and people I've come across.
There's one man in baseball who single-handedly is turning MLB's most exciting time of year into a boring, dragged-out nightmare. And the craziest part is he's doing it while claiming to help players. We're talking, of course, about Scott Boras, the most powerful agent in baseball history. And look, I'm not here to tell you he's a bad guy or that he doesn't get his clients paid. He absolutely does. But here's what nobody wants to talk about. In his quest to squeeze every last dollar out of teams, Boras is killing the fun of free agency, sometimes hurting his own clients and fundamentally changing the sport for the worse. Don't believe me? Let me tell you the story of Jordan Montgomery. But before we get into today, guys, thank you so much. We're on our road to 50,000 subscribers. I truly appreciate all the support. So if you're not already, please subscribe, turn on those notifications. We're giving away official MLB jersey to lucky winners on every couple of uploads. So drop a comment on what jersey you'd like. And I think on the next upload, we're going to be actually announcing our next winner. Now that that's out of the way, let's get right into today's story. It's March 2024, and the baseball world is watching one of the strangest free agency sagas in recent memory. Jordan Montgomery coming off a World Series championship with the Texas Rangers, where he absolutely dominated in the playoffs, by the way, with a 2.90 ERA across 31 innings, is somehow still unsigned. Spring training has already started, and Jordan Montgomery is sitting at home waiting for Scott Boras to find him a contract. This is a guy who went 10-11 with a career best 3.20 ERA and 166 strikeouts over 188 innings in 2023, split between the Cardinals and Rangers. And again, more importantly, he showed up huge in October, helping the Rangers win their first World Series in franchise history. Montgomery was projected to get somewhere around 5 years and $106 million. A $100 million payday would set Montgomery up for life. But Boras wanted $170 million, and he was willing to wait to get it, even if it meant hurting the player.
I don't think anything would get him to agree to a contract, because when you hire Scott Boras, the object is to get the biggest freaking contract ever.
So they waited and waited. Teams moved on, rosters got filled, and Montgomery kept waiting because Boras told him they'd get that big payday if they just held out a little longer. Now, here's the thing about Scott Boras. His whole strategy is based on making teams blink first. He creates these massive valuations for his clients and then plays chicken with every team in baseball. Usually, someone caves. Some desperate team overpays, Boras wins, the player gets rich, everybody's happy, except this time, it didn't work. March 29th rolls around, literally 2 days before opening day, and Montgomery finally signs. 1 year, $25 million with the Arizona Diamondbacks. To put this in perspective, Chris Bassett got 3 years and $63 million. Taijuan Walker got 4 years and $72 million. Jameson Taillon got 4 years and $68 million. These are guys with similar or worse track records than Montgomery, but they signed early. They didn't wait, and they got security. And the worst part, Montgomery ended up needing Tommy John surgery and missed the entire 2025 season, resulting in him firing Scott Boras. Boras might have screwed Montgomery out of generational wealth right before a potential career-ending injury. But Montgomery isn't the only Boras client this happened to that offseason. You know what people were calling JD Martinez, Blake Snell, Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman, and Jordan Montgomery during the 2023-24 offseason? The Boras Five. 5 of the biggest names in free agency, all repped by Boras, all sitting unsigned deep into the spring.
Boras Five, they're still out there.
Yeah, they are.
Did you hear anything this week? Anything pop up on your phone or nothing?
Nothing.
So let's talk about Blake Snell first. The guy just won his second Cy Young Award. He was the best pitcher in the National League in 2023, and Boras was reportedly asking for at least $270 million. The Yankees offered him 6 years and $150 million, but Snell turned it down. They waited. And what did Snell end up with? 2 years and $62 million with the Giants with opt-outs. Now, sure, the average annual value was higher, but he went from a potential $150 million payday to what ended up being just $31 million guaranteed. Cody Bellinger, former MVP, coming off a great comeback season with the Cubs, Boras was asking for around $200 million according to reports. What did he get? 3 years and $80 million from the Cubs with opt-outs after each year. Again, the AAV was decent, but nowhere close to the total money Boras was chasing. Even now, Cody Bellinger is a free agent again, and it doesn't look like he'll even come close to that $200 million number. Matt Chapman wanted around $150 million. He reportedly turned down over $100 million from the Blue Jays, and he ended up signing for 3 years and $54 million with the Giants. Now, granted, Chapman would eventually sign a $151 million extension with San Francisco, but that was only after he put up a 7-WAR season. Every single one of the Boras Five signed for way less than their initial projections. This is Scott Boras' strategy. Ask for the moon, wait for someone to meet your price, and when nobody does, scramble to salvage whatever deals are still available.
So if we identify a Scott Boras client, the first thing we do is we make a decision internally what our final number is going to be, what Boras is going to ask, and then in what stage we are going to give in to what he's going to ask.
Boras has been pulling this waiting game strategy for decades. Sometimes it works brilliantly, sometimes it blows up. Now, let's rewind to 2019 and talk about Dallas Keuchel. Cy Young winner in 2015, 5 excellent seasons with the Astros, coming off another solid year. This guy was supposed to get paid. Boras was reportedly seeking a 9-figure deal, something well over $100 million. Teams were interested, but Keuchel had rejected a $17.9 million qualifying offer, which meant that any team interested in signing him would actually lose a draft pick. So Boras decided to wait it out, except nobody cared. Opening day came and went. April turned into May into June, and Dallas Keuchel, a Cy Young Award winner in his prime, was sitting at home throwing simulated games for scouts while the season played on without him. Boras literally bragged to MLB Network Radio that they had so many scouts at Keuchel's workouts, we had to open up the hot dog stand. That's not a flex, Scott. That's embarrassing. Your client should be pitching in actual games, not showcase events in June. But finally, on June 6th, the Braves signed him to a 1-year, $13 million deal. This is a Cy Young winner who rejected a $17.9 million offer before the season, waited until June, and then settled for less money on a 1-year prove-it deal. The waiting game cost Keuchel something like $70 million in guaranteed money. Sure, he ended up getting 3 years and $55 million from the White Sox after, but that's still nowhere close to what he could have gotten if Boras hadn't overplayed his hand. Want to go back even further? Let's talk about 2014, when Boras had 2 clients, Steven Drew and Kendrys Morales, who didn't sign until late May and early June respectively. Both guys were subject to draft pick compensation, and both guys sat at home for months while Boras waited for teams to meet his asking price. Drew was ranked 14th on MLB Trade Rumor's top 50 free agents that year. He'd rejected a $14.1 million qualifying offer, and he ended up signing with the Red Sox, his previous team, for 1 year and $10.1 million in late May. But here's the thing that really pisses me off. Boras will stand in front of reporters every winter and act like he's some kind of crusader for the players, fighting the good fight against cheap owners. It's really hard not to dislike the guy when he goes on live television and thinks he's Dr. Seuss.
There's no doubt that Pete's pursuers are primed to pay the power piper. You know, Pete picked a perfect period to play preeminently at really a primary position. A playoff parched plethora will pounce to participate in the polar plunge.
After the Boras Five disaster in 2024, he blamed it on regional sports network uncertainty and teams not being aggressive enough. He said, quote, "We've had a dramatic difference in the competitiveness and aggressiveness of owners to win." Come on, man. The Dodgers spent $1 billion that offseason. The Yankees got Juan Soto. Teams were spending money, just not on Boras' overpriced clients who were attached to draft pick compensation and asking for contracts that didn't match their actual value. A real agent would have looked at the market and advised his client to take the qualifying offer. Look at Trent Grisham this offseason. His agency, ISE Baseball, evaluated the market, and after seeing he wouldn't be a top name, they advised him to take the qualifying offer instead. And this brings us to the real problem. Scott Boras isn't just hurting his individual clients anymore. He's actively making free agency worse for everyone, players, teams, and fans. Think about how free agency used to work. When I was a kid, you'd have this exciting period right after the World Series where big names would sign. Teams would make their moves, fans would get hyped about their new additions, and by the time spring training rolled around, rosters were basically set. It was fun, it was exciting, it gave fans something to talk about during the dead winter. Now, we get this dragged out process where the biggest names sit unsigned for months while Boras plays chicken with every team in baseball. Now it's a boring waiting game where nothing happens for months at a time. And Boras keeps doing this even though the market has fundamentally changed. Baseball front offices aren't the same as they were 15 years ago. Teams aren't run by old school baseball guys who make decisions with their gut anymore. Every single team now has analytics departments. They know exactly what a player is worth based on their expected performance. Take the Yankees and Cody Bellinger, for instance. Hal Steinbrenner has openly said he wants a lower payroll. They didn't anticipate Trent Grisham to opt into his $22 million qualifying offer, which adds another bloated contract to their books. Why on earth is he playing chicken with that front office in that type of a situation? Is he crazy?
And if they are in fact committed to staying under 304, you just yourself. You took away so much maneuverability, and it might cost you Bellinger.
The Dodgers aren't giving Blake Snell $270 million just because Boras made a PowerPoint presentation. The Yankees aren't giving Jordan Montgomery $170 million because he had a good postseason run. Teams know that pitchers in their 30s with control issues are risky. They know that players with huge strikeout rates and declining power numbers aren't worth 12-year contracts. They've got the data, they know the risks. A deal like the Albert Pujols contract is never going to happen again. But Boras is still operating like it's 2007. He's still trying to create bidding wars that don't exist. He's still advising clients to wait for offers that aren't coming, and his clients are paying the price. And it's not just about the individual deals anymore. Boras' strategy is creating this arms race of waiting that's making the entire free agency process slower and boring. It's starting to hurt the sport, which is terrible when you consider there's a potential lockout coming next season. Think about it from a team's perspective. You want to sign Blake Snell. You make him a fair offer, say 6 years and $150 million. That's a lot of money for a guy who walks a ton of batters and is in his 30s. But Boras says, no, we want $270 million. So you move on. You sign someone else. You fill that rotation spot. 2 months later, Snell's camp comes back around and says, okay, we'll take less. What about a 2-year deal? But now you've already committed your money elsewhere. You've already made your plans. The opportunity is gone. This is what people don't understand about Boras' waiting game. It's not happening in a vacuum. When he holds out with multiple top-tier clients, he's essentially freezing the entire market. Teams can't make their next move because they're waiting to see where Snell lands. Smaller free agents can't sign because teams are holding money back in case that player becomes available. The whole system grinds to a halt. You want to know what really happened in that 2023-2024 offseason? It wasn't a market collapse. It wasn't the owners colluding. It wasn't some conspiracy against Boras' clients. Teams simply decided they weren't going to play his game anymore. They made their best offers, and when Boras said no, they shrugged and moved on.
When I was with the White Sox, they would be like, we will not draft or sign a Boras Five.
The leverage has shifted, and Boras hasn't adjusted. Teams have learned that if you just wait him out, if you just refuse to engage in a bidding war with yourself, eventually he has to come back to reality, and when he does, you get the player that you wanted for way less than his original asking price. Let me give you another angle on this that people don't talk about enough. Boras' strategy has created this culture where players are actively discouraged from signing extensions with their teams. He's built his entire business model around getting guys to free agency. And once they're there, squeezing every last dollar out of the market. That sounds good in theory. Maximize value, get players played. But in practice, it means fewer players are staying with their original teams that developed them. It means more players are gambling on their health and performance lasting until free agency. It means less stability and, most importantly, less loyalty. Look at a guy like Jared Weaver. He was a Boras client. In August 2011, the Angels offered him a 5-year, $85 million extension. Boras reportedly told him to turn it down and hit free agency, where he could get way more. You know what Weaver did? He fired Boras and took the deal. He wanted the security, he wanted to stay loyal, and he wanted to stay to the team that he loved.
When we're drafting players, we take a look at who the player agents are, and if a player has Scott Boras as an agent coming out of high school or college, we will do everything we can not to take that player because we don't want to be involved with Boras at all.
Was $85 million less than Weaver could have gotten on the open market? Probably, but he got security, he got to stay home, and he avoided the stress and uncertainty of free agency. That has value too. Baseball is a long, hard, gritty sport. There's 162 games in a season. Times that by 6 or 7 seasons that the team has of control over a player. And we're talking about over 1,000 games. Every game a player doesn't sign an extension, they're gambling on their health to get paid. But Boras doesn't see it that way. For him, it's always about the absolute maximum dollar amount. Even if chasing that maximum amount creates worse worse outcomes for the player in every other way. Look, I know some of you are thinking, he gets players played. That's his job. What's the problem? And on some level, you're right. Boras has negotiated some absolutely massive contracts. He got Garrett Cole $324 million from the Yankees. He got Steven Strasburg and Anthony Rendon $245 million each. He negotiated Bryce Harper's $330 million deal with the Phillies. In the 2019-2020 offseason alone, his clients got over $1 billion in total contracts. That's insane. When Boras has a truly elite generational talent, your Harpers, Coles, Alex Rodriguez's, he's phenomenal. Those guys are going to get paid no matter what, so go and get the most you can. But here's the problem. Not every client is a Bryce Harper or Garrett Cole. And when Boras applies that same hold out for the absolute maximum strategy to players who aren't generational superstars, it backfires. When you demand superstar money for above average players, teams just say no thanks and move on. So next offseason and the one after that and the one after that, we're going to see more of the same. More waiting, more players sitting unsigned until spring training, and the teams that benefit most will be the ones with the deepest pockets. Every time Boras gets a team to crack and overpay for one of his clients, it reinforces his legend. Every time he can point to some massive contract he negotiated, it helps him sign more clients. His entire business model is built on this image of being the guy who never backs down, who always gets his number, who makes teams pay through the nose. But maintaining that image requires him to play hardball every single time. Even when it's actively hurting his clients, even when it's obvious the market isn't there, even when waiting is just making things worse. Jordan Montgomery paid the price for Scott Boras' ego. He went from World Series hero, positioned for $100+ million payday, to a guy scrambling for a 1-year prove-it deal because Boras wouldn't accept reality. Boras didn't take any responsibility. He blamed the owner. He blamed the market. He blamed everyone except his own terrible strategy. Boras never admits he screwed up. He never acknowledges that maybe his strategy doesn't work for every client in every situation. It's always someone else's fault. The owners are cheap. The teams are colluding. The market is broken. Never once does he look in the mirror and ask if maybe he overplayed his hand. But let me know in the comments what you think. Is Boras to be blamed, or is he just doing his job as an agent? Have you noticed a change in how fun or interesting free agency has been? And is Boras to blame for why we hardly see any loyal players anymore? Let me know in the comments below. But that's all for today, guys. I'll see you on the next one.